Okay, I'm also going to be going live on YouTube as well. I want to welcome all of you to the Relentless Patriot Nation. This is Relentless Patriot Frank, right? Remember what we are about in this group, who we are as Americans, what we believe in, right? Especially when it comes to family, flag, firearms, and most importantly, freedom. The freedom to do as you need, the freedom to work, the freedom to be a law-abiding citizen, the freedom to study and to follow as best as possible the Constitution and the amendment rights built for all people, right? That's why we have all these things. So let me just get right into it in terms of why we have join or die on our flag. You know, to some, it may be offensive. To some, it may be, well, what do you mean join or die? What are we joining, a cult? No, of course not. What it means is exactly that. It was one of the first political cartoons developed by Benjamin Franklin that helped rally and unite the 13 colonies. And I want to discuss that a little bit more with you guys in terms of the history behind join or die and why Benjamin Franklin created join or die. If you look at the very, very top of the snake, it has NE, which stands for New England. New England, meaning the entire 13 colonies at that time was all part of New England, right? And what do we have in New England, right? We have the Carolina, North Carolina, New York, New Jersey, et cetera, et cetera. And it's important that you guys know what join or die means, okay? When Benjamin Franklin created the join or die snake and he severed it into several areas, okay, he did it because he was disappointed in how the nation was fighting over nonsense. They were bickering amongst themselves. There was division among his fellow patriots, his fellow countrymen. Everyone was deciding, what are we going to do? We're part of the French Revolution, and how are we ever going to become a nation if we can't come together? And no, it's New York's fault. No, it's New Jersey's fault. No, you're a bad politician. No, you're. So if you guys understand the history, everyone was fighting back then too. It's not just now. Everyone was fighting over how are they going to defend their great nation. So the join or die part of our logo is very, very important. I'll explain why it's important at the end of this explanation here, right? But the snake represented all of New England, okay? And it was divided up into several parts for a reason. Because Benjamin Franklin, he already knew that the nation, the 13 original colonies, were at war with each other over every little thing. Does that sound familiar? And how can we apply that right now to what's going on in this country over every little thing, over political correctness, over racism, over, ridiculous amounts of, cancel culture, which we are at war with, all colonies, all 50 states. So if you ask me, we should make a new snake, divided into 50 segments, saying that we're all at war with each other, right? That's where the snake came from, right? So Franklin's goal was to unite the colonists to combat the French and their Native American allies, and to convince the British government to support a unified colonial government in America. And again, I just want to remind you guys about the French Revolutionary War, okay, which is a very, very pivotal point in our history, okay, that, during that time, yes, the British were still here. Yes, we were still under British rule, but Benjamin Franklin, being one of the original founding fathers, later on, still had this snake made. And the Do Not Tread on Me snake was also made as a byproduct of this original political cartoon. Okay? So he wanted a simple, unified colonial government in America. Right? We're talking about Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers. He didn't achieve that goal just yet, but that image was so powerful and persuasive that it took a life of its own a few years later, as you know, during the Revolutionary War. And the Revolutionary War, obviously, as you know, is the reason why we celebrate 4th of July. Right? It was a symbol to stand against tyranny, the oncoming onslaught of what was going to happen if the British were allowed to rule. Right? We already knew what they were doing to us, and Benjamin Franklin was not having it. Right? The story of this first viral image in American political history, and I'll give you the date, began in May of 1754, when Franklin, then the publisher of a newspaper called the Pennsylvania Gazette, and I believe that paper still might actually, it might have been in recirculation for a long time. It was one of the first newspapers. Obviously, as you know, Benjamin Franklin was one of the first original inventors of the newspaper, or any type of a tabloid, where it could be used on a drum and the ink would go onto the paper and then the next one would come, almost like a printing press. Okay? So he wrote an article in which he warned of the hordes of the French intruders converging on the western frontier in Ohio. Many were French and are expected from Canada. Oh, I think we know where we're going with this already. They were from Canada, right? The invading hordes were French and they were from Canada, of all places. The design began to establish themselves, settle their Indians, and build forts on the back of our settlements of our colonies. And, for those of you that don't know a little bit about history with Canada, for the record, Canada was pressing us at the time because they also wanted to take over our country. And I think till this day, a lot of Canadians are probably taught that history that, oh, we were about to take over America. We were unified with the Native Americans. It would have been us there instead of America. Well, sorry, pal. Sorry, guys. You lost. You lost that battle, didn't you? So that's what I think Canadians are, still to this day a little, perturbed about America, but only certain. Other Canadians love America. And, if I were you, I'd move from Canada. You guys have one of the strictest gun laws in the world, period. There's strictest laws in general against political correctness. Your freedom of speech is semi-silence as well. I would just move from there if I were you. You belong here, right? But this is the whole thing, right? But if that horrific scenario weren't enough to motivate Benjamin Franklin's readers, Franklin also illustrated it what would he call an emblem, a wood cut of a snake, cut into sections with the caption, "Join or Die." The identity of the actual artist who created the image isn't known, but the concept may also have been inspired by an illustration in a book published in France in 1685, which showed a snake cut in two with the slogan, "Rejoindre ou moi," which means "we'll join or die." So it's very, very familiar to certain parts of history why we have "join or die" on our Relentless Patriots emblem in our logo. Right? And I want you guys to remember what join or die actually means and how could it be applied right this second to what's going on. And the whole part is the snake was cut into pieces because Benjamin Franklin saw what was happening before his very eyes. He saw that the country was in trouble, in turmoil. They were all fighting amongst each other. What are we going to do? The French and the Native Americans are allied against us. What are we going to do? So he used this snake as a potent symbol, right? Which eventually would lead to a "do not tread on me" symbol, right? During the Revolutionary War, we know that was pivotal. That was one of the first original American flags prior to the 13 colonies being made, right? From Betsy Ross. And I am wearing one, by the way, proudly. As you can see, it's an important time for patriotism right now. And I want you to understand that the snake was cut into 8 pieces rather than 13. The head of the snake was labeled NE for North England, signifying the 4 New England colonies of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, in which Franklin combined to emphasize the importance of unity. Unity. Key word, unity. Other pieces were marked to signify New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, along with Delaware, which shared a governor with Pennsylvania, right? And Georgia, right? Which was a newer colony during that time. Okay, now the important part about the snake is when it was being put up, it was being passed around like wildfire throughout the 13 colonies, right? Again, Benjamin Franklin took it upon himself to make a newspaper, make flyers out of whatever parchment he had, and he had rioters and they go pass this around. We got to let people know now to rally against the tyranny that is coming. He published it with a political objective in mind. At the time, if you guys don't understand, he was prepared to join other colonial leaders at the Albany Congress, a meeting which was called to discuss how they should deal with the growing military threat from the French and their Native American allies. And Franklin thought that the colonies needed to join together in a strong alliance. He proposed a unified colonial government that could levy taxes and form a military governed by a council of representatives from each of the colonies and headed by a president or a general appointed by the British monarch. So he already had an idea of how our republic was going to be established. Benjamin Franklin, who was never a president, he was an inventor. He was well beyond his years, obviously, and he believed in unity through unifying together and obviously establishing some form of a Congress to protect the American people. And recently, I think a lot of you can honestly say that Congress has not done a very good job at protecting anyone. They've all become politically interested in themselves. They've all failed to represent we the people. So it's time that this snake is represented once more. It's time we bring it out. And it's time we tell people either you join with us or you die as yourself, as an individual compared to a unified America. And America is made and comprised of individual people. We understand that. But we all can agree to come together in times of tyranny to face tyranny head on. Right? Whether it be through rallying, whether it be through signing petitions, calling up your local governor and complaining like hell, making the phone lines ring off the hook, right? That's our job as Americans, right? But also, if the government fails to listen, it is our job as we the people to replace the government. And that's what I need all you guys to understand. Eventually, there's going to be a point, whether it be now or later, where we're all going to have to march to bring back the days of Martin Luther King, to bring back the days of unity, to show the government that they are not in control of our feelings and our future. We need everyone together to start denouncing this type of radicalism, this type of, it's not a patriarchy. It's a totalitarian, communistic agenda approach. We can no longer conform to what's been going on, aside from the virus, which we already know is a pandemic. It has been systematically devised by the globalist unions of the world. And we, the people, need to stand up. I think the rest of the world is waiting for us, as they usually do, to start making a change for them. And that's our job as patriots. We have to understand this at this point. It is our duty. It is our job. Because these governors are taking advantage of all of us. Okay? Now, I'm going to continue to talk about how join or die, more of the history of it, right? So, Franklin's campaign of persuasion got a boost when the Severed Snake cartoon was soon reprinted by more than half a dozen or other colonial newspapers. But he apparently wanted to reach another influential audience as well on the other side of the Atlantic. Since he didn't have Twitter or Instagram at his disposal, as you guys know, he mailed a copy of the cartoon in 1754. And this is what I was trying to say. He tried to reach out to people, to unify, to join or die, right? Along with his editorial to Richard Partridge. He's a Quaker merchant who acted as colonial Pennsylvania's agent in London. So he even tried to reach out across seas at the time to Britain and say, hey guys, look, we're under attack here. We need your help. We need to unify together. And it's very, very interesting, all this history here, right? So after a while, Benjamin Franklin kind of wrote out to England several times and said, listen, join or die, we need your help, we need your help. But the thing is, it backfired in his face because British politicians, or the monarchs, or whatever you have there, the king at the time, saw the colonial unity was a threat to their own control. So they didn't receive any help from the Britons, even though the Britons were supposed to be there. That was their empire at the time, and the Britons didn't want to help. They saw the 13 colonies as a threat. And that's very dangerous, as you guys know, right? So let's continue to talk a little bit more, right? So since Britain saw the colonial, 13 colonies as a threat, what had happened was the Congress at the time was they were still a little chaotic, right? No one could agree with each other. But the one thing that they could agree on was Benjamin Franklin's join or die. It was approved later on by the Albany Congress, right? And that's what helped kick off the French and Indian War. Later on, it was used again when the British started to abuse their empire, right? Started to abuse and kill and become tyrannical against the American people. You know, like even though it kind of failed, it really didn't, because still to this day, there is tyranny going on in this world that we must face together, right? And, you know, I'm going to get to part 2 of this, right? The cartoon was later adopted, as you know, for the Revolutionary War. And tons of people were using it back then. A decade after it was originally published, colonists that were protesting, okay, they enacted something called the Stamp Act, which resurrected the severed snake as a symbol of their desire to unify in the opposition of, what did Britain do? Unfair taxation. In 1774, Paul Revere used a version of it in the Massachusetts Spy newspaper at the time that was developed, right? The Massachusetts Spy newspaper, as did several other colonial newspapers, promoted the developing rebellion against Britain. So today it remains one of the most famous political cartoons ever published. And it's amazing, only 2 copies of the edition of the Pennsylvania Gazette with the cartoon still exist. Obviously, they've been preserved in the Library of Congress. And it's funny where one of them actually resurfaced in 2008 in a auction and someone purchased it, a collector, for $50,000. Crazy, right? So just a little history behind why we have join or die as one of our important parts of our logo in the Relentless Patriots group. Because right now, guys, we have to make a decision, don't we? We need to join and unify together, or divided, we are going to fall. Benjamin Franklin, almost 300 years ago, already saw what would happen if we weren't able to unify as we the people. And that's the important part as to why it was developed, why the Constitution was developed, right? Why the amendment rights were developed, why we need to join or die. Because united we stand, or divided we fall. It's our choice. And we have an obligation as Americans, as patriots, to educate people as much as we can against the tide of Marxism, communism, and socialism. We have a job to do, people. And as one of the leaders of the Relentless Patriot group, all of you need to be relentlessly patriotic. All of you have a job. All of you have a function to not surrender your rights to leaders that which do not respect them to believe, to begin with. We have an obligation. We really, really do. And I hope you guys understand that. Because at this point, we are getting pressed continuously, right? It's our job to join, or we will die, right? We will die. We're just going to continue to pay taxes, continue to have these corrupt politicians get constantly reelected in magically, and they're allowed to do whatever they want. They can vote on things that are not for our best intentions, and they get away with it. And as a result, they get richer and we get poor. As you guys saw from the Open New Jersey group, they were down protesting in front of Governor Murphdog's driveway. And I hope they accomplished something today. And I wish I could have been there. I would have been there. But just understand, I had to do something today, and I apologize for not being part of that, right? But let's make one thing clear. If you protest enough, if you rally enough, if you cry out for liberty and freedom, if you ask relentlessly to get rid of these politicians, our voices need to be heard until that happens. We must continue to fight. We have no choice anymore, right? And I want you guys to remember that the people in power right now don't know what join or die is. You'd be surprised how many people don't know the story and don't value it. But if you value it, like I do, if you understand what join or die really means, then remember what it needs to be done in times of tyranny. So, now that I finished my story on join or die, I hope you guys can considerably understand what the importance of it is and how we can apply it right now to what's going on, right? A lot of you guys know about the human sex trafficking, pedophile ridiculousness that's going on throughout this country. And the question is, what are we, the people, going to do? Right? More and more people keep going missing. If you guys saw the whole entire video that some of the Relentless Patriots and myself shared, there are underground pedophile rings being used as a front group, as a front runner, as a disguise, right? To sell children through the internet. Those groups, guys, if you look at Wayfair, okay, if you look at a lot of the liberal Hollywood elites, they are selling these children before our very eyes. And for some magic reason, some of them are giving hints to it. And I want you guys to pay close attention to Pizzagate right now, especially the fact that we have Ghislaine Maxwell in custody. Hopefully she'll get out the name soon, right? But pay attention to the internet, most importantly. Pay attention to the throw pillow sales on Wayfair. Pay attention to the amounts of money each pillow is worth. $10,000 for a throw pillow? And on top of that, you're going to attach a name of a missing person on there? You know how many there are on the internet, guys? It's ridiculous how many. One of my good religious patriotic friends sent me a whole list the other day. It was utterly disgusting how many names that I saw on this list being sold for tens of thousands of dollars. Honestly, if you guys want to pay $10,000 for a throw pillow and not realize that there's something more behind the scenes, I got nothing else to say to you. You got to investigate. Do your research. Human trafficking is a real deal, right? And it's up to us to call out, to protest, to start marches against communism and Marxism and tyranny. Because I can promise you guys this, that all of these politicians, all of these scumbags, these liberal Hollywood elites are behind the scenes doing a lot of dirty things. And I know you guys know that, right? So we got to remember, what is our job at this point? We need to start talking to each other about these things, okay? And at the same time, fight against this pandemic. Not conforming to wearing a mask wherever you go. Not conforming to fear. Trying to do our best by fighting back. All these businesses, including my own, have suffered tremendously from this. And we, the people, are outraged. We have had enough of the bullshit. And I'm sure a lot of you out there also have had enough. You know, so I'm going to also share something else with you guys. So in terms of this pedophile nastiness, in terms of the amount of Hollywood elites leaving clues for us to follow, what say us to take it to them, to harass their social media sites, to message them, to hashtag them everywhere we go? They want to try to cancel patriots like you and me. I say it's time to cancel them. I say it's time to cancel and boycott them. I say it's time to stick it to Hollywood. And I think we should all have a march out there. And I think we all should get out there and do what's necessary at this point to call for the removal of not only Democratic politicians, but of their Hollywood underground elites funding Black Lives Matter, right? Funding these little liberal projects that are going out there, this cultural Marxism, if you will. This is more dangerous than the virus itself. And if you ask me, it is the virus itself, because you can see what it's done to our country, haven't you? You know something is going on. You know something doesn't feel right. So we, the people, have to start speaking out. And for all of you that rather use racism as your defining factor that's going to help you fight this war, you're wrong. Racism is what they want. They want people divided. I implore so many people of different ethnicities and backgrounds to join our group because you'll be welcomed here with open arms. In order for you and anyone else to do so, I only ask this of you. Let go of your own hatred. Let go of your own intolerances. Let go of your own racism, if you have it. Let go of all of the things that you've been taught and reopen and re-educate yourself as to what really defines patriotism. Because I promise you, at the end of the day, when you rally together with people that have your back, that care about you and your well-being and your family, there will be no reason for them to try to divide us anymore because we will all be united. Hence, join or die. We have a choice, everybody, right? We really, really do. And I hope all of you understand that at this point, that there's always a choice. You can always change your mind. And I'm willing to, again, engage in debate, engage in talks, engage in anyone that wants to say anything, that wants to come on and express their dismay with what's been going on lately in this country and around the world. Because let's face it, guys, globalism is here, and everyone, it seems, that is in the higher up groups want it to stay. And it's up to us, we the people, to fight this battle together. Right? Because what's going on right now, guys, is something that I like to call a cultural war. Aside from the human sex trafficking, it is a cultural war. It is a systemic problem, not systemic racism, the systemic cultural war, the political correctness war. That's the thing that we need to fight together over. Okay? And the way you fight hate is by loving, right? Learn about each other's cultures if you're from different parts of the world, or, open your mind to what's going on, because the cultural civil war, whether you guys like it or not, is here. And it's time for us, we the people, the conservatives, the patriots, some Republicans, if you guys still have a backbone, 3%ers, et cetera, to fight back. And how we fight back is by being relentlessly patriotic, as I like to say. Right? It is our duty, our job at this point to start firing back. They're going to press us to the point where, yeah, there will be people, aside from the Black Lives Matter protests and looters and, rioting and all that crap. There's going to be people that are going to hurt each other. It's inevitable at this point. Every single time I turn on YouTube and Facebook, I see people being knocked out. I see white people being picked on. I see people claiming racism when there is no racism. I see all these ridiculous people claiming all these things, and it's utterly disgusting when there is no evidence behind it, when all there is feelings and no facts, right? The daily spectacle of angry mobs, pulling down statues, taunting police, attacking passerbys, like I was saying, and taking over city blocks makes it seem like Black Lives Matter is a mass movement. But it's not, guys. That pretty much everyone except knuckle-dragging Trump supporters is on board with its radical agenda. And that the new national consensus is that you're either anti-racist or are you racist. That's what it seems to me. And I'm sure all of you guys can agree with that. Like they want to have their own version of join or die. And it's the wrong version of join or die. Unity requires everyone to join. Okay? Now, a lot of us are not racist because racism is also a fabrication. And it's ingrained in everyone. And it's up to you to have the will to denounce it. You have the power to denounce racism by simply not being it, by embracing everyone. It really is that simple. And if you're a patriot, you're not racist. You are not racist. And you have nothing to apologize for how you're made and who you are. And guess what? If you happen to like the opposite sex and they happen to be the same skin color as you, that's okay too. You like what you like. Don't let anyone try to guilt trip you into thinking that you need to like or forcefully like someone else from a different culture if you don't. For all I know, listen, There have been plenty of people of color, ethnicities, that didn't want to be my friend for whatever reason because they thought I was a rich white boy. Yada, yada, yada. I think that's a crock of crap. I think you should have been my friend, right? But I'm still not sitting here judging the rest of society based upon the actions of a few knuckleheads, if you want to call them that. Okay? And guys, look, under these conditions, many Americans feel disoriented and discouraged, right? We know that. Confusion abounds. When did it come, when did it become racist to like the national anthem of Mount Rushmore? Can you guys tell me that? At what point did we decide that George Washington and Abraham Lincoln were moral monsters, or that all police are accomplices in racism and that they're racist thugs? Can you guys tell me? I'm pretty sure you guys can't, because it doesn't exist. If you break the law, something will happen to you. Plain and simple, right? So, and someone answer me this, right? Why are all rioters and looters allowed to terrorize people and go unpunished? Why are they allowed to destroy property? I understand that Trump's making arrests now. Well, first of all, why did we allow it to happen to begin with? Why do we give so much power to these governors to do whatever it is that they feel like doing? Simply because they're scared of being racist, or they want to join the movement, quote unquote. They want to join the movement. And guys, for the record, this movement is not over, is it? It's not over. This movement is just getting started. We have a job to fight this movement. But the way we fight it, whether it be boots on the ground, whether it be meeting them head on, anytime they have a protest, we need to have a protest. Anytime that they go on social media, we need to be on social media. We need to fight them head on this way, and we also need to fight them more with love. Recruit more people from their side to ours. That's our job. Because they are being terribly, terribly misguided. And they're not being taught about what real patriotism is and what it should be like. So we got to remember that too. And, if you think what's happening in America right now is crazy, you're not alone. You're just not. It's true that something changed, right? That we're in the middle of a crisis, that a cultural civil war is underway and escalating as we speak, right? But it's not true that this is a majoritarian movement, right? The majority of people are not, keyword not, part of this. But they're forcefully trying to get people out of the shadows, or out of the woodwork, you could say, and trying to instill hatred and fear and have people change their opinions of each other overnight. The hordes of protesters, impressive as they may seem, does not represent the country at large, as some of you guys heard some of our Relentless Patriots talk about. It just doesn't. We got to remember the radical leftists, the left-wing agenda radicals. They're using classic cult psychology to wage psychological war against the rest of us by guilt-tripping us, by telling us we're guilty. And for the record, I just want to say a couple things about the white privilege theory. I've been watching closely at certain groups that want to discuss the Black empowerment complex, or the racist empowerment movement, on how white people are privileged, and that somehow magically everyone gets to dictate the type of percentage of privilege that we have. Let me ask you guys this question. Where do you come up with your numbers? How do you know white people are privileged? Did you take a look at the amount of problems white people have? Would you like to switch shoes with me real quick? Would you think your life would be better off because you're white? White people have many problems, many issues, just like any other person around the world, from any other culture. Everyone has their own individual issues, and we should not make or apply one issue that you're having to the entire race. If one white person is bad, you know what? They all must be bad. Nonsense. Because look, I've had bad things done to me by different people of color, but I'm still not here applying it with a big, giant, broad brush across everyone and saying, well, that person didn't have the, he didn't have the right to call me a white boy or a cracker or this and that. So therefore, all of them are going to be that way. No, I'm still not sitting here. I'm not letting anyone dictate that to me. Neither should you. Neither should anybody. And you shouldn't be bullied for who you vote for goodness sake, people. Aside from having a two-party system, in which I think we should abolish that and have multiple party systems, obviously, that are in the front runner, not in the background, but multiple parties are in the foreground, presenting all their ideas, and everyone can have a civil debate other than being childish. That's what America at least used to stand for, right? The openness to ideas, not this cultural Marxist movement. That's not going to fix stupid. If anyone else is out there, please tell me how that fixes America, because it doesn't. And I will tell you guys this much, okay? The Black Lives Matter movement and its attendant ideology contain all the elements of a religion. It promulgates doctrines that are explicitly normal to them. It has a cosmology and a morality it claims are not subject to or consistent with scientific proofs. In other words, they're not real. Okay, especially when you guys look at the stats. Go to Statista.com if you want the most non-biased stats out there and charts and the amount of people that have been killed from each ethnicity. You will still see to this day, for the past 10 years in a row, that white people have been killed by police more so than black people have. You will also see that white people are also suffering at the hands of black crime. They're second rated in terms of black on black crime. They come in second. Now, is that racism? Of course not. Of course not. But the stats don't lie. And we have nothing to apologize for if the stats don't lie. Right? The numbers are not fudged. Right? The things that I will say to you is that, if you're part of this cult, if you're part of this ideological movement, which gives you a person of color power over somebody else by calling them a racist, you are the racist. You do not belong in America when you constantly promote hate and not unity, as what we were talking about in the beginning, right, of our show today. The joining or dying. Join or die is not whether you're racist or not. Guys, there's going to be racist people until the end of time. It's up to us to ignore it and move forward. Ask them to unify. Ask them to at this point, we all need to even put aside prejudices in which you think you may have. Just put it aside and learn from one another. If you ask me, the latest arguments that I've been seeing online with all these quote unquote black empowerment groups have all they've done and all I've seen is excuse making. And they want to chastise white people this, white people that. But yet they will never, never, ever denounce the Democrat Party. They act like the Democrat Party is going to save them. Guys, the Democrat Party does not have your interests in mind. They don't care about your freedom. They care about your, votes. That's for sure. They care about enslaving you. But they don't care personally about your family or your well-being or the amount of crime in your neighborhood. All they care about is keeping you on welfare, keeping you down, keeping you and the single motherhood rate through the roof. We got to understand that this is what is going on currently and has been going on for the past 50 years. All you got to do is look at Lyndon B. Johnson back in the 1960s with his, ridiculous Jim Crow laws. And guys, for the record, the majority of the red line laws were established by Democrats, to keep you all in the inner cities. People like me want to see you succeed. We want to see everybody succeed. And just because you're born of a certain skin color does not mean you cannot succeed. If you feel that you cannot succeed in this country, then let me know where you can succeed, or go to a place where you think you can succeed and give it a shot. We all have the equal opportunity these days. Aside from the affirmative action, which in my opinion is extremely racist, and it goes to show you that affirmative action thinks that minorities are dumb and that they have to help you. They have to give you affirmative action. They have to give you automatic placement. Even if you don't want it, they'll give it to you. So I would say this. If you're for affirmative action, then what you got to do is simply this. Re-educate yourselves, innovate, motivate, inspire, be a hard worker, and you don't need affirmative action. You say, you know what? No, thanks, I'll pass. Because affirmative action is racist. And it continues to give the people the illusion, the excuse, the entitlement theory that that's what they deserve because they are a person of color. And that to me is racist. You're not giving anyone the fair chance to do what they got to do to be competitive, to educate themselves so they do go to a good school, so they do get good education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone says, well, we don't have those programs available. Well, what programs would you like available in the inner city in which are ran predominantly, mostly by white liberals and Democrats to keep you down? You need to move away from those cities. I've said this in the very, very beginning when I started this channel, that you need to move away and just start over. You have that right as an American citizen, and don't let anyone tell you that you can't. Right? We got to remember, this is like a religious movement, and if you're going to join that religion and you're going to do things for that religion, you're going to be in trouble. The religion I recommend you go by are things that have morality, civility, right? Traditions. Things that are going to want you to be free, especially the mindset. Your mindset also needs to be free. Stop hiding, right? Stop hiding. Stop doing things that are bad for you. Start doing things that are good for you. We all have a choice. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about at this point, right? We all have to do our part. It's long past, time, guys, to fight back. It won't be easy, in part because the radicals are largely in control of messaging, of social media, of news. They have the sympathies. They've already guilt-tripped and brainwashed and indoctrinated so many people, right? If not outright, demand allegiance. Demand it at this point. They're extremely good at getting people to follow their weak cause, their systematic cause, if you want to call it that. If you want to talk about real systemic oppression, it's the mind. Most importantly, the mind, the ego, it's a very fragile thing and it's easily broken. That's the true enslavement of what's going on currently, right? So you got mainstream media that we're up against, guys. You got big tech and corporate America, right? Now, BLM also has more or less control of the Democrat Party. You guys all know that, right? Through forms of, aside from mainstream media, you got corporations that are funding it, such as Starbucks. If you guys saw that recently, they're going to make 250,000 T-shirts of BLM. What does selling a cup of coffee have to do with Black Lives Matter? Can anyone tell me that? Imagine if, just for a second, imagine if your local company said, okay, guys, we're going to wear these T-shirts because we want to be for equality. When meanwhile, half your staff is black. Your manager may or not be black, right? Your human resources lady might be from the inner city and might be black as well. So how is that going to make you feel as a non-black person? Do you think it's racist? Absolutely, it's racist. Because they're picking and choosing what groups are more important. And if you ask me, we're all important. No one should be wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt the same way no one should be wearing a White Lives Matter t-shirt. Right? We're all important. And at this point, as a patriot, we have an obligation to fight back against this indoctrination. And I made a whole entire live video last time stating about, in a pattern, how Marxism and liberalism and socialism and all these ideologies have been wrapped up into these universities, spewing hatred and brainwashing our youth into thinking that it's okay to be this way. And it's not. We all know that, right? And I know it seems like a lot, but it's also less the same. This is a movement conceived and sustained mostly by elite white progressives. People that have too much, but yet, because they have too much, quote unquote, they're never able, somehow, magically, they're never ever able to give back aside from rallying in a protest. I've never seen any of them adopt a child since they're 4 coming over the borders illegally. I've never seen them help out at a soup kitchen. I've never seen them ever do any type of donations. I've never seen them do anything for anybody else, especially their own, each other. Yeah, I got you back, man. Here's a little joint. Yeah, I got you. Most of them are on drugs. So how can you trust people, my friends, that are degenerates and don't do anything for anybody anyway? When all they want to do is take your money and make you feel guilty at the end of the day. Like Bernie Sanders. If you ask me, the very, very definition of what people are doing right now is just like what Bernie Sanders is doing. Oh, let's be for each other, but give me money. I'll help you. And then the money never, ever reaches back to we the people. Now, does it? Same thing with BLM. Has BLM come out and apologized for the 20 black people slain in all the riots and looting? Of course not. Have they apologized for any time a black person has killed a white police officer? Of course not. Have they apologized when a black person committing a crime or another person committing a crime, killing a black police officer? Have they came out and said anything against that? Of course not. You'll never hear that. But what you will hear all the time is how America is systemically racist. And that I need to give some of my privilege to a fellow person of color. Otherwise, I'm part of the problem. I need to join or die. And that is a false, misconceived notion of what join or die means. As I was saying at the beginning of this show, that joining or dying means to unify, not to intimidate, not to harass, not to be for tyrannical outlawism, but to be against tyrannical outlawism, to be against things that are bad for this country, to be against socialism and Marxism. We have an obligation as we the people to denounce these hatred movements because they've been around for quite some time. And now they've come back out from the hole and popped its ugly face out to surprise everybody in the world. We have a job here. Like last month, some 20 million people showed up to these movements and rallies. But for all the wrong reasons. I say to all of you, what would happen if you had 20 million people march on Washington against human sex trafficking? Right? Or against crony capitalism? Right? Why are we marching against the patriarchy when the majority of people that run these corrupt movements are women? And they're in corrupt positions. Why is it that no one's saying those things? Why is it that Margaret Sanger or Hillary Clinton, Michelle Obama, or any of the liberal Hollywood elites, the pedophiles like Alyssa Milano, why is no one marching against those morons, but unifying with them for Black Lives Matter? Can you guys tell me that? This is common sense approach and thinking, my friends. We got to wake up to to the hypocrisy. And I want you guys to remember that every single time you're on this show, or if you want to come out and say something, you got to remember what our job is here, right? To call out the hypocrisy and to bring forth the true meaning of join or die. And rally behind the last thing that we have left in this world, if you want to call it that, for freedom, the American flag. The American flag represents that, or at least I thought it was supposed to, right? That's signifying against tyranny and for unity. And if people don't know what that is still, educate yourselves. Don't join hippieist movements. Don't join a religious cult. Don't join a movement of hate. Don't join an organization that decides to separate you more than keep us all together, right? That's what they want. They want to control your every thought, your every move, your every process and pattern as to which you conceive the world through their eyes, not your own, right? Like, again, I stress this number to you. 20 million people participated in this nonsense. They have been able to do this because of obviously social media and big tech companies and all this other stuff. But, their their physiological and psychological, whatever you want to call it, the manipulation has been very effective against people that are not willing to think for themselves. And if you are an independent thinker, such as myself, if you do go against the grain, you are canceled, you are censored. Your reputation is ruined for the rest of your life. You're a bad person. This whole guilt-tripping narrative in which socialism comes from, Marxism and communism. If you want to join a party that is for you, join the party of patriotism. There is no political party that can fix your situation except you. It is up to you. When you don't like high taxes, you go and protest against high taxes, right? When you don't like a corrupt governor, you need to get out there and protest against that governor. That is our job as we the people, everyone. Not to loot, riot, murder in the name of racism. Because racism, my friends, is always going to be around from every culture and every nation. We got to do better. We have to do better. It is our job as Americans to do better, right? It's our job, and stand with the police. We have a couple police rallies coming up. There's one tomorrow locally, several towns away in Suffern at 11 a.m. Be there to back the blue. It only goes for about an hour, but if you can make it, it'd be great. There's a bigger one going on in upstate New York on the 25th. And that will go from, I believe, for 3 or 4 hours. I will let you know. I'll let you guys know what the times are later, right? But it's our job as patriots to unify for law, order, and that's how you're going to get peace. And if you're still not happy, again, if you're still not happy with your situation, you need to change it. If you think I'm sitting high and mighty in my castle simply because of the color of my skin, you're dead wrong. I still got bills to pay like you. I still got everyday struggles I need to deal with. Health issues, medical issues, this issue, that issue. We all have the same issues. If you guys can all sync together and figure out that we have more in common than we do have that's different, you would see a different mentality, a different America, a better America. You guys can all rally for patriotism, can't you? If you want equality, then rally with patriots like myself. Be part of a better movement. Don't rally for something that causes you to be a victim. Let go of your fear and your hatred. Let go of things that have been taught to you, possibly by family and friends, and maybe your liberal college professor at your local university. Keep fighting for what's right. It is our job. And as a relentless patriot, I want you guys to understand that I have the best intentions for me, but I also have the best intentions for you. Right? And that's the difference between this group and any other group that wants to turn you into a victim, a pawn, a fluke, a catch and release fish, if you will. Someone that doesn't take you serious. Right? Because that's what they do. They pretend, but but what are they going to do for you in the long run? With all the money that BLM is raising behind the scenes, do you think any of those local black communities or inner city communities have seen a cent of that money? I don't think so. And I think you know the truth too, that no one has received anything other than go out and rally for us. Be our little pawns in our evil plan, right? We got to remember what this stuff's all about and stop making the excuse. Stop calling things systematic oppression and racism, like just because you don't understand. You may not understand something. Maybe you have a question. Maybe I can help answer it for you. Maybe I can give you the tools. I don't know. If you have that conversation with me or whoever else is willing to talk to you about it, to come on and talk to me about it or message me on the side. I am here to speak to you. It is our job as patriots to speak to each other, right? And remember, when in doubt, rely on your fellow patriot for advice. Don't rely on a movement that turns you into a victim. That doesn't fix anything, my friends. There are bigger fish to fry other than looking for who's the next racist. Isn't there? We got human sex trafficking to worry about. We got tyranny to worry about. We got amendment rights to worry about. We got all these things that are potentially being taken away from us from the same leaders that promote tyranny, that promote victimhood, that don't want to see people like you or myself or others succeed. Right? That's what we need to rally and unify against at this point. Don't be part of Black Lives Matter. Don't be part of Antifa. Don't be part of things that don't see anything good for you. They just use you as a pawn and pay you. That's the main thing I wanted to get at. Why is it that you need to be paid to do something patriotic? Look how many people were paid and bought off and bribed from the Soros and Clinton foundations to go out there and do damage to this country. It's a bunch of mercenaries, guys. That's what mercenaries do. They get paid, and the same thing with bounty hunters. They get paid to do a job, and then they're done. They're not for the cause. They're not for freedom. They're mercenaries. They're paid off flukes and hacks. They're, if you want to call the real deplorables of this country, those are it. Those are people that are just being taken advantage of, that are being brainwashed and indoctrinated by the hippiest movement of the past and forming these radical, chaotic groups. So we got to remember what this is about here, and the fact of the matter is this. I respect all walks of life, as I'm sure a lot of you do. But when you are disrespected, you are allowed to protect yourself. When someone calls you a racist without any evidence and decides to call you a name, you have every right to protect yourself. You have every right to say, no, you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. You have all those things in which makes you you. And you should never apologize. You can't choose the way you're born, my friends. It's made. It's already predetermined, predestined. And that's a gift in itself. If you want to talk about human free will, if you want to talk about true freedom, it's the ability to be born however you are born. No one gets to choose that for you. Whatever you get is whatever you get at the end of the day. And it's up to you to live with those house of cards. It's up to you to deal with your body. It's up to you to deal with your mind. It's up to you to develop your future. And nobody should be taking that away from you. Because if they do, that is tyranny. That is what's going to get you killed. That is what's going to see you fail. That's what the Democratic left wants you to do. They want you to fail so they can be there to pick up the pieces for you. And I'm pretty sure you guys understand where I'm coming from with this. It's pretty much common sense at this point based upon all the things that we've saw. So again, I ask you to join or die. Join or die the movement of patriotism. Join or die against tyranny. rally together, march together, signify. Again, if we had 20 million people to march on Washington against communism, Marxism, crony capitalism, etc., etc. Like, bring back the days of Martin Luther King, and you'd have a better future in which we can all rebuild together. It has gone in cahoots. The corruption is overwhelming. We have a job to fight against that corruption. I'm pretty sure you guys understand that by now. You know, I'd also come up with a way to drain the swamp. And this is from actually a great article, and it's from the Claremont Review of Books. And I'm going to read this to you. And I want to know your thoughts on it, okay? For the United States is not now, and has not been for some time, a constitutional republic as the founders and their heirs understood what that term was meant for, right? The administrative state is not merely unconstitutional, it is anti-constitutional. The essence of constitutionalism as a practice of reconciliation, of wisdom and consent, has been infringed upon. Because wisdom can be approached but never achieved. The consent of the government is required to preserve man's natural freedom in the face of wisdom's limitations. Hence, the best and most stable foundation for political order is that a wise legislator frame a code for a political citizen body, non-duly persuaded, or persuaded, depending on what you vote for. And that's the important part. It freely adopts that code, which is, as it were, the embodiment of wisdom, must be as little subject to alteration as possible. The rule of law is to take the place of the rule of men. However wise, make legislator plural, and you have a fine description of the drafting and the ratification of the United States Constitution. You know, like, that's how you drain the swamp. And it sounds very familiar to what I have said in the past. If you want to drain the swamp, then get behind the Constitution and your amendment rights. And that's all the rules that you ever truly need to know, amongst all the other law codes out there, and police codes, and traffic, regulations, and, this law and that law. If you go to the Constitution and you reference it always to certain parts of your life, you're going to have a better time fighting for yourself. You're going to have a better time developing that individual personal responsibility we talk about. And I think a lot of you can understand where I'm coming from with this. And for anyone that's still watching out there, I've seen police video after police video of people in where the cop is being senselessly beaten for trying to do their job. But no one has come and spoken out against that. No one has said, hey, who's going to help that cop in any of those videos? Or, hey, let the man do his job. All I've seen is people cursing at the cops and treating them like garbage. Guys, they have families they got to go back to at the end of the day. I'm pretty sure they're not thinking in the back of their head as they go into work or as they leave from work, who am I going to arrest today? Who am I going to be racist against today? Who am I going to apply my white privilege to today? Or who am I going to apply my, my frustrations on? I don't think that's what a cop thinks about 24/7, as I know several dozen of them. And they're all in good positions. Detectives, captains, lieutenants, and they all have several hundred officers that they have to command and look after on a daily basis and deal with all their issues. Guys, we're all human. We all make mistakes. But look, if you're going to harass the cops and prevent them from doing their job, then I'm sorry, but that's part of the problem. You see, because you cannot assume that every single cop that happens to be white happens to be racist. That doesn't fix stupid, does it? Okay, and it goes to show you that the price of self-delusion is real. The price of self-delusion. What you see isn't exactly what you see. You don't know the situation. If you happen to see a police officer and you're walking down the street and all of a sudden the police officer has to make an arrest, why are you interfering with that cop if you know it's nothing bad? If it's something bad, I'd say, okay, wait a minute now. What's going on here? Right? But let the police officer do their job. You don't know what's going on. You're not the expert. You're not a forensic science major. Right? But you are, in doubt, paying these police officers to do their job. Your taxes go to them. So make sure you back them up. Make sure you don't act stupid. Make sure you don't act disrespectful. Make sure you keep your hands out of your pockets. Make sure you don't curse them out because you're angry that you got a ticket. Make sure that you're respectful to police officers because ultimately they're going to be our last line of defense aside from we the people. And I'm going to read again about self-delusion. After 1917 revolution, its leaders had wooed disaffected African Americans to Russia, posing the Soviet Union as a welcoming alternative to racist America, which doesn't make any sense. Like you're going to say, okay, go to somewhere else, go somewhere else. And this is during the Depression, nonetheless. This is during the Depression. During the Depression, they encouraged communist sympathizers and job seekers to move there. By the early 1930s, 100,000 Americans had applied to go. So communist sympathizers here had said, hey, why don't you go to Russia? It's much better. Why don't you go back to another nation? It's much better. So they actually tried this during the Great Depression. And here's the importance of what I'm trying to say here, okay? So just listen to the rest of this. Again, during the Depression, they encouraged communist sympathizers, key word, communist sympathizers, okay, and job seekers to move there, to Russia. By the early 1930s, 100,000 Americans had applied to go, responding to Soviet ads in American newspapers. As the decade progressed, many would be swept up during Stalin's Great Purge. And that's something I'll talk about on our next show. Okay, but just understand the political climate back then during the Great Depression. And it sounds awfully familiar to what's going on right now, as we're going to be in a Great Depression because of this pandemic. Among the blacks who packed their bags were Frank Good and John Good Jr. The two brothers there were two brothers. Both had become sympathetic to Soviet communism with its promise of racial equality. In addition to blue-collar workers, the Russians also appealed to black professionals and artists. And the great Pan-Africanist W.E. Du Bois had all visited Moscow a few years before Robinson died in December 1934. And you got to remember these names, okay? Robinson's wife, Islanda, had the two boys, okay? Frank Good and John Good Jr. So it was already in the family. Communism was already set in the family. It was already taught since inception, since birth. And I know a lot of us right now during this political climate are talking about individual personal responsibility and teaching, our children, right? So let's try to teach our children as to why communism is bad, not good. Because you can clearly see what happens here, right? Now, Good, again, which is the older brother of the two, Frank Good, was most certainly not happy. Okay? In fact, his sister and his mother feared that he was going to be arrested after they left the country because of what Good had privately told them. Already they were informed the Soviet authorities were showing distrust toward the Americans who had come to help the revolution. At Good's request, Robeson helped to get him out of the country after his concert tour. I guess they were musicians, it says here, telling authorities that Good was going to take a short vacation. My goodness. Making all these crazy excuses. I'm going to go to Russia because it's much better. Because communism rules. But I fear that I'm going to be killed if I go. Well, it's up to you to go. I know some people that moved to Europe, and they want to act like Europe's much, much better, even though most of Europe is socialistic. But it just goes to show you that communism, back then had infiltrated families, much like it's infiltrating families to this day. And, I think after a while, aside from welfare or economics, aside from the education process, it has infiltrated the family home through government policies. Government policies, aside from welfare, you got single motherhood rewards, right? You have all these free socialistic schools with all these liberal professors teaching. You have all these crazy, communist-related organizations teaching our youth, meeting up at Youth Day and speaking to them. You got recruiters from Antifa all over the place, especially on social media. You got YouTube. You got all of the main channels on television. You got MTV preaching racist nonsense against white people 24/7. You got all these shows on Netflix. So if you want to talk about indoctrination, if you want to talk about racism, it's already here, guys, and it's up to all of us to tell people not to watch this stuff. Communism is infiltrated. They're making America look racist. And the question is, if America is racist, where is anyone going to go where America is deemed good? It sounds like Russia is involved with the Democrat Party. If you ask me, it sounds like Russia, and it sounds like other political party hacks don't like this country because they think it's racist. Meanwhile, you have the largest population of multiculturalism around, more so in this country than the entire world. And we allow 1 million immigrants of different ethnicities to come here every single year. Now, what country does more than that? I want names, I want answers, and I want dates from all you communists out there. I don't think so. So it just goes to show you, like, totalitarianism is out there, communism is out there, and we the people need to start fighting back. And being that since the last Great Depression in the early 1900s, it just goes to show you that it's still here and that we need to fight back. For any of you guys that have any other questions, feel free to message me on the side, as I like to do these shows. And let's keep this movement going. Remember, join or die. Join or die, right? And that's a very, very important thing that Benjamin Franklin created. Join or die the colonies against the tyrannical French American, the French, during the French Revolutionary War, the French Indian War, the Revolutionary War. Join or die. Because that's what we need to do. Too many Democrats think they can control, manipulate, make us feel discouraged. We have a job to do, everyone. And I hope you all will join me in doing it. Until next time, everyone, take care.